Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Monster Hunter World video. This is Thegameconomist, and today we're using a PC mod. We're using the Moonlight Greatsword mod. This was made by Ezekiel. It was uploaded by Shoots Lasers. Is that the same person? See, I'm still a bit unfamiliar with the whole way Nexus mods work. That might be the same person, I'm not sure. So for those of you who aren't sure what a Moonlight Greatsword is a weapon from the Dark Souls series, or the Souls series if you want to call it that. That's owned by FromSoft. FromSoft was the developer for that game, and is a weapon that reoccurs in all of their games. You just see it over and over again. It's a really beautiful magic weapon, right? They have magic damage in that game. They call it intelligence or sorcery in their game, and it's just a very popular weapon. It's always been pretty good. And here you can see me smashing up Arch-Tempered Valhazak with it. So I thought, it's going to look really cool if I use it against Arch-Tempered Valhazak, because he actually looks like he might be a Dark Souls monster, right? Dark Eater Midir? He looks a little, well, Dark Eater Midir, I would argue, is a little more detailed, and he's a little crazier in some ways, but they have a similar dark tone, right? A bit of grittiness to them, when you say. Yeah, there's a bit of a grittiness to each of them. And then I dressed myself up to look as much as kind of like a sorcerer, or also I thought it would be interesting the fact that I look a little bit like a butterfly with this outfit. And of course, if you play Dark Souls, you know why. But here I am, I'm fighting him, and there's a lot to talk about. The way the mod works is you're able to choose which greatsword the skin goes over. It's the skin essentially, right? And so nothing's been changed about the values of the weapon. You can see I'm dealing kind of low damage. That's because my build's a bit more defensive, right? I wanted to be able to do this reasonably, because one of the other things you'll notice is I'm not running a HUD, so I have no HUD. So I don't want Arch-Tempered Valhazak to be able to one-shot me. That would be too difficult. Yeah, you can't play with no HUD, and I suppose it's hard to say, isn't it? It's hard to say. But yeah, so I went with a little bit more of a defensive build here. And I'm playing with no HUD for the visual effects. Maybe what I can do, I'm talking about this live while I'm doing the commentary. This would be funny if I did maybe a Dark Souls overlay. I wonder if I could get that into the video somehow. I'll have to learn more about that, because I know there's another Nexus mod out there, or mod for having the Artorias armor skin, right? So this would give you a layered armor that makes you look like Artorias. And then I believe the Artorias Greatsword is in the game as well. So I'd be curious about doing that mod later. But for those of you who didn't know, I'm a big fan of Dark Souls. Really, really, really enjoy that game. And before I got into Monster Hunter World, that's mostly what I was playing. I was putting out videos all the time on Dark Souls 3. I don't know if any of my old viewers will even... I don't know if they visit my Monster Hunter videos anymore. I know how it goes. When your YouTuber that you're watching moves on to another game, you kind of move on to a new YouTuber. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if any of them moved on to Monster Hunter World with me at the same time. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I tend to play games for a long time. Like Dark Souls, I played for about 2,300 hours before I stopped and got into Monster Hunter World. And Monster Hunter World now is about 2,000 hours later. So I would be surprised if any of the Dark Souls players that I knew are still playing Monster Hunter World, just because I play for such a gratuitous amount, right? I play a lot. Here I am, I'm chopping up Valhazak. I'm missing some of my moves, aren't I? He's just moving around so much. He's really not a bad monster to fight with the Greatsword, is he? Yeah, if you're fighting a monster that moves around a bit more, then you have to try to chase him more. With Valhazak, you just kind of get right underneath them, and something's going to get smacked. Like, there's a nice arm break. Very good. For those of you who have trouble with Arch-Tempered Valhazak, just remember to break his arms. Whenever his arms break, I don't know if it's guaranteed, but you typically get a knockdown when you break his forearms. There he is, big jump, right? He's a pretty simple monster in my opinion. Who's the most difficult Arch-Tempered monster? Well, Xeno'jiiva's up high on the list. Arch-Tempered Xeno'jiiva, I think he's the most difficult right now. That would be my guess. He's pretty tough. Just because the fight lasts for so long. There's a very long fight. The Valhazak fight lasts for a while too, though. But I don't know, I just find him easier. He's easier to predict. Maybe it's because his moves are simpler. And you can just get underneath them, right? You can't really do that with Arch-Tempered Xeno'jiiva. Arch-Tempered Xeno'jiiva is going to smack you, and then you're going to get your butt kicked. Yeah, he's going to use whatever his concentric ring attack. I have my affinity booster out here because I do not have enough affinity to reach 100 affinity. In fact, I probably lose my sharpness, but I have no way of knowing just because I'm playing with no HUD. Ooh, some background noise there. Wait for that to pass over. Somebody's flying an airplane. See if I can get this tail cut. There we go. Nice. So yeah, what do you guys think? I love the detail on this mod. It looks really good. It actually looks very similar to the Dark Souls version of the weapon, and I feel like one of the things people like to do is actually compare Dark Souls and Monster Hunter together, because there are some, you know, they share some ideas. Kind of one of the basic ideas is they both have, well, I would say that Dark Souls has more RPG elements, it's more complex, there's more RPG elements than Monster Hunter World. Maybe if you're a big fan of Monster Hunter you don't hear that, but it's very similar ideas of min-maxing, but I feel like they actually get slightly more technical in Dark Souls, and one of the reasons for that is just because there's so many different weapons, right? In Monster Hunter, you have 14 different weapon classes, and then you have some principles for each of the weapons in that class. Ideas like stun values, maybe. I think the bowguns are one of the most complicated ones, which maybe that's why I was attracted to the bowguns in the first place. But for example, in the greatswords, you just kind of figure out whichever one has the most raw damage, and then you check to see if it's even possible for an elemental damage greatsword to surpass the highest raw damage greatsword, and then you're done. Well, in Dark Souls, each of the weapons has like a special weapon move. What do they call that? The weapon art? This is in Dark Souls 3, and they have a variety of moves that aren't just for dealing optimal damage. A lot of it has to do with like being able to poise through a monster's attack, understanding recovery frames, understanding range is very important in Dark Souls 3 in my opinion. Attack speed is much more important, and each of the weapons are very different from each other. So they had kind of like they had weapon classes in Dark Souls, the way that they have weapon classes in Monster Hunter World, but not quite, because each of the weapons were actually very unique. Oh right, I mess up here. He gets me with that pretty hard. That could have been my death right there. So one of the things I have going on this build, because I'm playing HUDless, I actually give up 10% affinity to have the heroic skill, and that way I can know if I'm about to die. Because it's the only way for me to know. I could also try one level of peak performance, I thought of that, but that's not going to work with Valhazak. Ooh, I'm stunned, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Okay, I'm better. Very good. I got my max potion. I'm going to keep chopping him up. So we've cut his tail, we've broken his right, oh my god, I just got paralyzed. Oh yeah, I remember that now. These damn things. Are these gyros? I think they're gyros that have been affected by the effluvia, right? They look like they're gyros. That's why they paralyzed me. They get a little mutiny going on there, a mutiny. I'm part of Team Gyros, guys. You got to help me with Archnever Valhazak, not make it more difficult. I'm referring, of course, to our Discord Turf Wars, which, by the way, if you're not in the Discord playing the Turf Wars, feel free to join. I always have a link in the description of all my videos. Yep. But yeah, as I was going on, there's some differences between Dark Souls and Monster Hunter. One of the things I like about Monster Hunter is that the actual monsters are more complicated than Dark Souls. Okay, so I said that Dark Souls gets more complicated with its RPG elements. I think that's true, and that's just because it has more details in it for each individual weapon. Whereas with Monster Hunter, I was surprised to learn that the monsters were considerably more complicated because they had issues like they had internal health bars for sleep, paralysis, stun. They had an internal health bar for something called exhaust. They have hit zones on their attacks, right? That was something that definitely wasn't true about Dark Souls. You just hit whatever your target is, you just hit them anywhere, right? So hit zones, kind of reminds me of Dead Space, doesn't it? You shoot them in the limbs, stuff like that. Well, you don't do that in Dark Souls. You just hit them wherever you can. Another thing that we're not talking about complexity here, but difficulty. In Dark Souls, you get these heavy iframes. You get very large iframes for being able to dodge your opponent. And in Monster Hunter World, that's not true at all. What you get in Monster Hunter is you get more options for defense, so you can actually make it so that the monster is not able to two-shot you. In Dark Souls, you either get one shot or you get two shot against a difficult person, whatever you're fighting, right? And then you can add something like Tears of Denial, or you could go really heavy in terms of defense and maybe be able to be three-shot by a serious boss, three-shot, but you're able to dodge everything. In Monster Hunter, it's like you get significantly stronger defense options, I want to say, between Vitality, Health Boost, Elemental Resist, Fortitude especially. There's nothing like that. The fact that you get more than one life, like in Dark Souls, if you die, it's over. In Monster Hunter World, you can die 3 times, so it's significantly different in that regard. But then again, if you want to actually be able to dodge through a monster's attacks, you have to get, this is what's surprising, you have to get really good at the game to be able to dodge through the monster's attacks, because the iframes are very different between the two games. So with Monster Hunter World, the iframe for dodging through a monster's attack has to be just dead on. It has to be perfect. For Dark Souls, it's like, just spam the jump button. Just not the jump button, the roll button, of course. Alright, so what I've done here is I've picked up Dragon Pods, and I've stunned Valhazak while he was trying to escape back to his nest. That's because I want to drop these teeth on him. They're technically boulders, right? But you can tell they're actually, visually, they're teeth. So I'm being very careful. I want to get it just right, and there we go. That gives me a nice chunk of damage and a knockdown. Now, if I could just land the other tooth, I would probably kill him right here in this area, but I actually failed to do that. Spoilers. There his head breaks. Very nice. I've pretty much broken all the parts of his body. You can see there's one more tooth left, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd like to drop that, please. Valhazak doing his roar. I failed to dodge any of his roars. That's the other thing. Dark Souls was pretty simple. Everything's trying to kill you, and there's poison, I suppose, right? There's not that many ways for you to die other than straight damage. Whereas in Monster Hunter World, you have issues like there's tremors, right? So you might consider building tremor resist, and tremors might strongly affect you. There's wind pressure, like Lunastra, right? Wind pressure, it affects you. So you have these other issues in Monster Hunter World that add a layer of complexity to the battle that you don't necessarily see in Dark Souls. Yet when you play Dark Souls, a lot of the times it's more difficult to get into it, to actually begin playing Dark Souls. Like the, if you want to call it like, barrier of entry for being good at Dark Souls is very high. And once you figure it out, you can kind of get along, right? You're probably going to lose a few times and have to restart, but whereas in Monster Hunter World, if you just really understand defense very well, you can play quite casually and finish the game. The difficulty is in being able to create a high-quality speedrun. Watch this. Boom, he blows himself up. I loved that. And I was just over there. I was already gathering. So he is done. Yes, awesome. Wow, I didn't realize when I began this commentary that I would have such a good amount of things to say about the differences between the two games. Here you can see my build, by the way. But yeah, maybe I'll continue this when I take a look into more Monster Hunter World PC mods that deal with Dark Souls. Alright, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.